Hi, how are you? Now we are having a very special guest in our interview. This is Dr. Jianli. He's coming from China. He has been involved in several incidents against the communists in China, and now he lives in America, but still he works for the freedom of his own country, China. And we have a lot to learn of what's happening here in America. Dr. Jianli, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
And the first question, in the communism that it's hurting our nations, not only in China or in Cuba or North Korea, but it's still alive and it's still growing and it's still distributing its evil results through all these countries, but not only in America, in Africa and Asia. What's the paper or the role that China is playing in spreading the communism and its bad effects into our countries?
Yep. After the Cold War ended, people believed communism was no more. But today we realized, to our dismay, that the communism still existing. So the question, how we deal with communism and communist regimes and communist movement around the world still remains a very, very important questions. And I have, like many in my generation and the generation ahead of me, we lived through so-called communist system or socialist system. We know how brutal it is, how anti-human it is. But when we moved to Western countries, United States, for example, many people still believe, socialism. Socialism, by theory, is fine, but when you put it into practice as what Soviet Union and China did, that would cause disaster to humanity. So I don't have to repeat, what happened. I think many people have already been aware what happened to the people in various communist countries. But China remains the strongest country ruled by the communists. Oftentimes we don't see the communist regime continue to uphold the ideological idea, like the communists in the pure sense. But we cannot forget, in every generation leader of the Chinese communist regime, in their box, in their toolbox, there is such a thing as communist measures, ideas, all the policies, in the toolbox. In China, the communist idea and communist policy have never been officially denounced, still shrined in the government hierarchy and ideological hierarchy. So that gives a very dangerous potential that someday, if one leader or another in China thinks they have to revive the communist model that Mao Zedong practiced, they could do that, because they're still part of a political correctness.
And killing 100 million people.
Yes. So that's the danger facing us and facing everyone in the world.
And I heard you in a conference that there are some ideas that we can practice to combat the communism or their advances in Latin America and elsewhere. How can you, in a very brief answer, tell us what can we do to face the expansion of the communism and the Chinese influence in Latin America?
Yes. And first of all, we have to make tremendous efforts to educate the general public in various countries about the nature of the communist regime and the communist policy. And I think many of my countrymen, including myself, can do a great service in this regard. And I do believe in schools, in public schools, the communism must be taught. I'm not saying the propagate or advocacy of communism. The history of
the effects.
The effects, the disaster the communist has brought to the humanity must be taught in public schools. So this is one thing we can do. But nowadays, China is everywhere. So China has no such a thing as a soft power. Communism, of course, is not easy to sell for the Chinese because they have a history of failure in this regard. But China now does have money. So not money is China's soft power. And we just cannot overestimate the influence of money. So China goes everywhere with money, at the same time exert influence, penetrate in the democratic way of life in various democracies to the degree that must alert to all of us. So what I'm propose is that democracy must come together to form some kind of alliance to help each other economically and to restructure the supply chain away from China so that we cannot rely on China for supply chain, because China will have a leverage to impose its influence and even change your politics in your country. So that's the number one thing we have to do. Number two, many democracies, by themselves, they are willing to stand on principles on human rights issues, confronting China or Russia and other dictators around the world. But those dictators, they come together very strongly, and they usually have a very strong government power to be able to retaliate economically against whoever stand up to their human rights abuses. So in this case, the question is how much a democracy, especially a small democracy, is willing or is able to sacrifice by standing on principles. Yeah, it's a risk. So the answer probably is very limited. But we must do everything to enhance their ability to stand up on principles. So we must come together to help each other economically and form some kind of alliance like NATO, but it's not military. I call it Human Rights Economic NATO. So all the members committed them to defend each other economically. One attack should be considered as attack on everyone.
You attack one, you attack all of us.
All of us. Then economically we have to come together to help, and economically we have to confront collectively with whoever attacked this alliance. So just like the NATO's Article 5 commitment, I think that's the thing we should do in the democratic world.
Okay, well, you've heard an expert in communism and the influence of China, the evil influence that China has in the world. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Dr.
Rene.
Jianli, for being this afternoon with us.
Thank you
very much.